good evening, or good morning, depending on where in the world you are. This is CitizenGO's live stream on Gender Truth on Trial. For those Aussies who are tuning in the wee hours of the morning, I apologise that Anna Derbyshire is not here, who's our US campaigner, but she's been suffering a bit of laryngitis. But we've got Carolyn Farrow, the great Carolyn Farrow from the UK. Carolyn, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks, George. Very well.
And it's good to have you for this particular live stream because you've run into trouble with the trannies before, haven't you?
Yeah, just a bit. As I was saying off air, I have been sued 3 times for £100,000 by an extremely notorious, vexatious man called Stephanie Hayden, originally known as Anthony George Stephen Halliday. He's got a very long criminal history. He's got convictions for fraud, dishonesty, and sexual assault on a child. And a history of basically, if you say anything mean about this man or anything truthful about this man on social media, he will hunt you down. He will come to your house with his lol suit, as we call them. And it's a very strange thing, for somebody who's being harassed. To actually go, if someone was harassing me, I would do everything I could to stay away from them and go nowhere near them. But this guy goes to your house and will deliver you a lawsuit in person and take pictures of your house and then, use that to continue to intimidate you. And this man had me arrested twice by Surrey Police. Now, the case has just been resolved. I've been paid 5 figures in damages. They're paying our legal costs. But, he took up so much of the police's time with this vexatious campaign and complaint without never once outlining his own behaviour. Just before I went on air, I was lamenting the fact that every day that this guy goes onto his X account and uses it pronouns for me. He calls me a horse. He continually says how ugly I am, that I'm a horse. It completely dehumanizes me. While at the same time, and using these it pronouns, while at the same time screaming that he's the poor harassed, victim. And of course, this is what these activists, as we're going to talk about later with our special guest, do. They are very good at using the woke language and weaponizing the police and weaponizing the authorities and making themselves out, to be the victims, when in fact they are the predators. They are the ones trying to get into our spaces, into our changing rooms, and into our sporting competitions. And you dare to tell the truth, and they will try and bring, the whole house of cards down on you. They will try and ruin your life. And I think it's interesting, isn't it? This man that I was talking about told my local police force that I was making his life so miserable, I had to be removed from the internet, that he couldn't cope with hearing my name. And since the case fell apart and I got compensated, he's taking to X every single day. He's seeking me out. He's talking about me. And I'm like, hang on a minute. You said that I was stopping you from being able to lead a normal life. So, this is the sorts of tactics they engage in.
We look at this from afar in Australia, and we see these scenes of people being arrested for, posting something on X or whatever, and we think, oh boy, geez, what's happened to the UK? What's happened to the motherland? But now it's happening to us, and we've got obviously someone that we're going to be talking to very soon, Kirralie Smith. Mother. She runs an organization by the name of Binary, which pretty much is an organization that stands up for women's rights against this gender bending insanity that, this idea that men can somehow be women, which is just nonsense, right? It's just absolute nonsense, as you and I both know. But we sort of think to ourselves, oh, we're better than those poms. But the reality is, we're not. This woman, Kirralie Smith, has just gone through the ringer because she called out a couple of blokes that were playing women's sport. They're playing soccer or football, as you would call it in the UK. And, they were doing quite a bit of harm to the actual biological women that were, I shouldn't say biological, the real women that were playing in the game, doing quite a bit of damage. And, she called it out, and she said that these blokes should not be playing in the game. And as a result of that, she's had AVOs, anti-violence orders, brought against her. She's now been through court under an anti-vilification complaint, and now been fined $95,000 for simply identifying these two dudes as dudes. And there they are, Caroline. You can see them right there. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, clearly blokes. Now, that one on the left is called Justin Dennis, am I right? And the other one is called Nicholas Blanche? I mean, they are clearly men. You can see that the Adam's apple there. And fine, if they want to pretend to be women and cross-dress, then good luck to them. Fine.
Knock themselves out. Yep.
It's like
just don't knock anyone else out.
Live your best life, but living your best life does not mean taking up a space on a sports team that belongs to someone else. And I know I used to play football, and my girls play football at school. There is a difference between male physicality and female physicality. Men are, I don't know, is it 30% stronger, more athletic? I know this from going to the gym. And, football is a contact sport. You get tackled, you can get kicked in the shin. And so it's not surprising that these poor female football players are being done an injury because they've got two blokes on their team. So that not only, causes injuries in training, but also in other matches, because I don't know about, certainly I wouldn't go up and tackle a man for the ball. You're going to get hurt. So either they'll have a free run at the goal because nobody wants to tackle them, or they'll get injured. And in the UK, we've had similar. We've had a girl who was autistic. She's 16 years old. And, she's similar to Kirralie. And she said, she actually asked somebody, "Are you a man?" Because she could tell he was, and she felt really uncomfortable. And, she got kicked off the team and banned from playing. And it's just so unfair and needs to stop.
Yeah, it is. Well, for that heinous crime of saying that men are actually men and not women, and they shouldn't be playing women's sports, Kirralie's been fined $95,000. And, I actually don't know what's worse, the $95,000 fine or the fact that the court that has ordered that against her has actually also demanded that she make a public apology for her opinions. And to me, actually, I firmly believe that's worse. That's worse.
Yes.
Money can be gotten, but integrity has got to be kept intact. Nonetheless, Kirralie is dead set fighting against it. I mean, she's got quite a case. I mean, the fact is, the Olympics now, they don't recognize biological men as women for women's sports. So what is wrong with what Kirralie Smith has done? And I think it's probably about time that we bring Kirralie into the conversation rather than talking about her. She's waiting in the wings. Kirralie Smith, thank you very much for joining us in the wee hours of the morning there in New South Wales. How are you going?
Yeah, really well, thanks. Thanks for having me. It's great to talk to you both.
Well, I'm sorry you're going through what you're going through, Kirralie, because, I can imagine that the weight of the world feels like it's on your shoulders right now. And I can also imagine this great sense of injustice and just insanity about what courts are ruling How are you feeling? Firstly, how are you holding up with this decision?
My answer to that these days is I'm feeling everything. I'm feeling everything from, discouraged and despair in some moments, but mostly peaceful because I'm right and I haven't done anything wrong. And I feel really supported. I feel like, literally hundreds of thousands of people have either sent money or kind messages of support,
Yeah.
have shared the information. So I do not feel alone in any way, shape, or form. And George, as you know, this week's been the most difficult week of all in Australia with the attacks on Bondi. And you and I met, because of the Islamic issue in Australia.
Indeed, we did.
More than a decade ago, talking about these things. So it's really difficult.
Well, we weren't allowed to talk about that then either, remember?
Well, absolutely. And I had troubles then. But the point is, it's almost the same spirit behind it, that anyone who wants to speak the truth, anyone who wants to pull back the curtain on what, is really happening, and anyone who just wants to have a civil, reasonable, engaged debate about the facts and the evidence is shut down, censored, gaslit, and taken to court. And we're seeing that. And it doesn't really matter what the issue is, but if we're not spruiking the right narrative, the left narrative, let's say, then we're really running the gauntlet and putting ourselves at great risk to do so. But I can't not do this. I have all the evidence on my side. I have the truth on my side. And, I kind of joke and say, even if I'm the last man standing, I'm not going to change my mind about this. Men are men, women are women. I don't think that there's any reason, excuse at all that men should be in the women's spaces where we need privacy, dignity, safety, fairness. In general life, have at it. I don't care how you identify. I don't care what you call your name, anything like that. But you cannot come into our spaces, services, and sports and expect us to deny what we see with our eyes and to put ourselves at risk for the sake of your feelings.
Now,
sorry,
I want to say quickly, Caroline, before we go, we've got a petition to the New South Wales government running. It's gendertruthontrial.com is the website. And what we're trying to get, we can always hope, Kirralie, we can always hope, but we're trying to get Premier Chris Minns and his Attorney General to recognise the insanity of this and actually change the anti-discrimination laws, which have caused you to be fined $95,000 at the moment until the appeal's heard. So we're just asking that anyone from around the world, actually, that wants to jump on this campaign, gendertruthontrial.com, and you can send a message through to the New South Wales government just telling them that it's quite unfair that a woman who has actually spoken out and said that men are men, they're not women, they shouldn't be playing women's sports, that for that heinous crime, they should not be fined $95,000 and forced to apologise, as Kirralie Smith has been. But sorry, Caroline, I interrupted you. Over to you.
It's not a forced apology. It's actually a confession.
That's ridiculous.
I hadn't read the full judgment. What I need to do in the orders is I'm ordered to pay damages. Then the next order is to remove any reference or name or images of the players off any social media or website. The very next order is I have to pin a post to all my social media and to my website that names the players. So work that one out. And I confess that I have been found guilty of vilification under the Anti-Discrimination Act in New South Wales, and that they really are women, and that I was wrong, basically.
Yeah, well, to me, that
confession, not an apology.
Crazy.
This is all. I mean, it's become almost a cliche, but this is Orwellian or medieval. I confess. And in fact, my mind is blown, Kirralie, because anti-discrimination laws were are actually for the kind of good of society, for the good of humanity, to make sure that women aren't unfairly discriminated against for their sex, or that, you're not unfairly discriminated against because of your race or your skin color, or, any other sort of characteristic about you that you have no control over. But actually, they were not designed for a tiny, tiny minority of people who had through they have a mental illness. Let's be honest here. If there is something about you that feels, I reject my body so much that I want to be, I reject, I was given the wrong body. That is like a mental disorder. And actually I do accept there are people who are genuinely dysphoric, and they are caused so much distress by their own body. And my heart goes out to those people. It must be awful. But at the same time, that's like a mental illness. And I'm sure we can all exercise compassion and say, okay, Bob feels better if he presents as Lucy. You can make some sort of accommodation, but it's always about a balancing of rights. And so an anti-discrimination law is not meant to disadvantage the rest of the population, the majority. These laws are for the good of society as a whole, and actually they're harming society because they mean that women can't play football or play sports. You've probably seen the case in the UK, the Darlington nurses. We met with them yesterday. We're protesting CitizenGO's bringing the legal challenge against puberty blockers, the puberty blocker trial they want to bring against children in the UK. And we were out on a protest yesterday. And these nurses in the UK had to share a changing room with a man who called himself Rose, who had his male tackle hanging out of his pants, was trying to impregnate his female partner, was going up to one of the nurses who was forced to disclose that she was a victim of rape and sexual assault, and was going up to her and saying, why aren't you getting undressed? Sort of sensing that she was uncomfortable, and cornering her and having a go at her for not getting undressed in front of him. And he was making these nurses feel so uncomfortable. They weren't able to get changed for work. They were having to change in unsanitary conditions or go into work wearing their uniform, which is not sterile, not ideal. And they were vilified when they said to their management, look, we've got a fully intact male here who's trying to impregnate his partner, and we don't want him in our changing room. They were the ones that were sidelined, disciplined. It is absolutely crazy. And the fact that they're making you say sorry for actually telling the truth, it should frighten us all. It really should. And I guess you've answered, sorry. I mean, so what are the next stages?
Well, can I just give a kind of set the record straight on what actually happened first, so that the viewers understand?
Yep.
In Australia, and George might be able to speak to a bit more to this, but in 2013, our first female Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, one of her last acts was to remove the definitions of sex from the Sex Discrimination Act. So we now have a Sex Discrimination Act that doesn't have protections for sex, and our Sex Discrimination Commissioner, Dr. Anna Cody, can't define the word sex or woman. So, it's absolutely farcical and Orwellian, as you said. And so, that set the ball rolling, I guess, or set the stage to allow people with gender identity issues to supersede women's sex-based rights. So it's made a very, very difficult situation here because we actually don't have protection in law whatsoever to move forward here. But what happened was, for me, this wasn't even about the individual players. And I am a registered third-party political campaigner. Binary exists to discuss public policy around gender and sex. We exist to protect women's sex-based rights, child safeguarding, parental rights. So everything I do is around this. And, we, I think, reasonably believed that we had protections, the implied freedom of political communications. And we also, what I believed was that I could take information from the public domain and repost it. That's what people do every single day of the week. You guys do it, journalists do it, politicians do it on the floor and off the floor of Parliament. So I didn't dox anyone. I didn't go searching for this information. The information about these males were on Football New South Wales and a local football club in the public domain. I simply took that information, I reshared it, and I asked the questions, why they're males in women's sport, and what's the point of having male and female sport? So that was the extent. I did it repetitively. I went through, I went to the local club. I went to the regional manager, who was exceptionally rude, I might add, and said, if blokes want to register in the women's team, as long as they pay their fees, we're good with that, which I found obviously very horrifying in the early days. Went through to try and talk to the state and federal organisations, couldn't get anywhere. We took the campaigns public, asking those questions over and over and over again out of frustration, and because we should be able to have that policy debate. This impacts thousands of women in Australia who play not just football, but play sport. Men were on top of the leaderboards. There was allegations that women were being hurt. And as a public advocate, I believe that's my role to bring that information into the public sphere. And for that, you've experienced this, Caroline. I had police officers at my door issuing me with apprehension of violence orders for taking information from the public domain and reposting it. And I shouldn't be surprised if we redefine the word woman to include male, then why wouldn't we redefine words violence? What happened in Bondi is violence. What I did is not violence. And I feel very strongly about that.
Just to clarify that, you've these two blokes, you've never met them. You've never laid eyes on them.
I didn't even name them, George. I just took screenshots of what the football associations had done. I didn't personally do anything else.
And as a result of what you posted online about them, even though you've never met them, nowhere near them, the police came and gave you an AVO, an apprehended violence order, which is normally the kind of thing that people would serve someone if there's domestic violence or stalking or something like that. That's what you copped as a result of doing this.
Correct. And I do want to, let's just say there's some things in the judgment that the Guardian and the ABC here picked up on that we are very much contesting, because I have never met them and I've never been to their games. I have not organised a mob of men to go to their games. So let me just put that out there. I won't go into any more details, but I have been accused of that. It is demonstrably not true. There is no evidence for those things. And it obviously, Caroline, you understand this. You're being accused of things. You're being labelled.
Yeah.
Call me names for what I've done, but don't make stuff up. That's, I get really cranky.
It's gaslighting. I know. I was in a situation in a courtroom where this activist got an injunction against me because he said that over the period of a weekend, I had posted hundreds and hundreds of tweets about him. And obviously the judge was quite horrified by this and said, so he granted, but it was quite funny actually, because the guy that was bringing the injunction ended up with an injunction against himself too, because the judge sort of realized there was maybe a tit for tat situation going on. And he said, I'll only grant an injunction against her unless you agree to be bound by the court too. And I sat there, Kirralie, and I thought I was losing my mind, because he said, she has published hundreds of tweets against me in the weekend. And I sat there thinking, I'm sure I haven't. And my husband was looking at me thinking, Caroline, what? And he had deliberately played a legal trick where, so he hadn't given us his argument in advance of the hearing. We got it 5 minutes before, so we didn't have a chance to double check it. Anyway, I went home and I printed off my Twitter feed to see. And in fact, instead of being hundreds of tweets, there were 10. And it was all in response to various threats from him to sue me and to come to my house. And it turned out it had all been a plan. I had been baited. There had been a website a week before saying, Farah, I can't repeat what it said because it was, sexual threats. But it was saying, Farah, you're going to have a surprise. You're going to be in court 38. And then he claimed that, these were all things that I'd said over the course of a weekend. But it was that same, gaslighting. And even now, there has been a piece published against me this week. And they're saying, oh, Farrow illegally doxed somebody. And again, I neither doxed them nor illegally. But, somebody says something and it sticks. And when it's in a judgment, like in your case, it's even worse. And I don't know if you've seen, Kirralie, but we've had a similar case in the UK. Sandy Peggy, a nurse in the NHS, and she's been appealing a tribunal judgment against her. And the judgment has been full of AI. The judge has actually relied on AI and has talked about the mayor for starter, the defining judgment in the UK. and it's included fake citations that don't exist.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, has that happened in your case? Or
well, again, I can't look. My appeal will not be based on one or two issues. It's based on many factual errors and also points of law. So I can't go into all of those things. But I've talked about the apprehension of violence order, but I also, as you mentioned earlier, been found guilty of vilification. And in the judgment, part of that was that I persistently misgendered these males. And, and in court, I was accused of persistently misgendering. But I want to make that clear. You take the stand. And what's the first thing you do when you take the stand in court? You swear to tell the truth. And I told the truth. And then I was asked repeatedly why I wouldn't use female pronouns. And I said, because I have sworn to tell the truth, because this case depends on it, and because my whole political advocacy depends on it. But I've been penalised for that. That is part of the reason for the high damages. And so, of course, I'm going to appeal those things. I will never refer to those men or any men as she, her, miss. I really believe in free speech. Even more so, I believe in truth speech. And so that's what this is about for me, that we should have the right and the ability to speak the truth, to say what, as we said, humans have this incredible innate ability to recognize or almost immediately whether someone's male or female. And that is a self-preservation, innate human ability that we have. And again, I don't really mind. I will actually, George, if you came to me in a dress and you said, call me Betty, I probably would call you Betty. I might refer to you as female, but people have names, they have nicknames, whatever. I don't care. But I will not say, come into my change room, Betty, or I'm okay with you playing sport with me, Betty. Like, that's not going to happen. It's like, you do that, but that's not, and I won't call you she, and I won't refer to you as a woman at all. Because that's compelling my speech. That's taking away my human rights and my human dignity. And it also is, we must protect the children, and it is unfair to do that. And you've talked about other women being gaslit. And in my situation, there are hundreds of players, parents, coaches, and even club presidents that have come to me privately and cried on my shoulder, have shared the humiliation, the distress, the enormity of what they're facing. They, took the steps, as I did, to make complaints to the clubs or to the associations, and were threatened the same way, that you'll end up in court under the Anti-Discrimination Act if you forfeit, if you complain, if you speak publicly about these things. So some of those girls have to self-exclude. Others who have played their whole life, sacrificed so much, are moving into semi-professional football with the goal of going beyond that, are now facing, serious risk to, whether it's injury, dignity, fairness on the playing field. They're not getting the top goal scoring positions and awards. They're not getting the opportunities that they should be getting. But if they want to continue in football, they just have to suck it up. And I think that's unacceptable.
Do you think, Kirralie, from the perspective of a British person looking at this, right? I find this incredible that Australia is so behind the curve. I know that Britain, Turf Island, has led the way in pushing back against this madness. But no, and I know that so many British women are just with you 100%. But from a British perspective, I just find it incredible. We were brought up on Aussie soaps and Neighbours and A Home and Away, and what's his name? I've forgotten. The guy that used to do the Foster's advert, the crocodile.
Paul Hogan.
Paul Hogan and the bluff Australian, right? The bluff Australian, completely plain speaking. The most far removed from woke that you could even think of. I'm just amazed how Australia has made this shift in the past 40 years.
Well, I think we personify tolerance, the true meaning of tolerance and inclusion. The Aussie spirit has always just been, she'll be right, mate, come on in. We give everyone a fair go. And, what you see is what you get. But it's now being used against us, I think, is the problem, because we've been so relaxed, so inclusive, so tolerant that, as I said, these girls just want to turn up and play football. And they've even given it a go. Like, they've gone, oh, okay, we don't feel comfortable. But it's too late. Once they go, this is wrong, I am really uncomfortable, I'm really afraid, this is not what I want, it's too late, because the institutions have been so captured that they've literally put these boundaries in place where you cannot even make a complaint without having then a complaint made against you.
Now we've got a campaign going, a petition going, Gender Truth on Trial, trying to get the law that Kirralie has been fined $95,000 under, the one that she's been found to have breached, which is the Anti-Discrimination Act, if I'm not mistaken, and the
and George,
vilification clauses in that.
Damages, not fines. It's damages,
apparently. Damages. So that's money that actually goes to the blokes. Correct? Yep. Okay. So, we're trying to get the Premier and his Attorney General in New South Wales to see sense. And if you want to jump on board that, it is gendertruthontrial.com. But Kirralie, you are actually appealing the court's decision, and you are fundraising yourself for that. Tell us a bit about the appeal, of what you can tell, and also tell us how people can avail themselves of if they want to make a donation to that cause.
Thanks, George. Yeah, so we are putting in an intention or a notice of intention to appeal. Now, this all happened in the local court in New South Wales. So there's a few different options for us now. We can't go straight to the High Court. We either have to go to the Appellant's Court or the Supreme Court in New South Wales. My lawyers are putting all that together, and we'll put that notice of appeal in. So we'll take the next steps. We obviously hope to be successful there, but we're prepared to go all the way to the High Court if necessary. The response has been phenomenal so far, but Australians can just go online at binary.org.au/donate. International donors probably need to send me an email, and I can give you the bank details of a trust fund, a legal trust fund that you can deposit into. So I'm overwhelmed by the amount of support so far. I'm so grateful. I believe that we will have, more than enough to proceed at this stage. But, as you both know, each court is more expensive. The only people who win out of all this are all the barristers and silks, as we know, and the judges. None of us will benefit. But it's really important because, as I said, this isn't just about me. This is about the ability to speak plainly and truthfully in Australia, and it will really impact, streamers like yourself, public figures, journalists and politicians. So this precedent cannot be allowed to stand. We have to overturn it for the sake of all Australians.
Now, what's your email, or is there a contact page on the Binary website?
Yeah, info@binary.org.au. There is contact on the website as well.
Okay. So info@binary.org.au if you want to get in touch with Kirralie if you're outside of Australia and you want to assist in this endeavour, or just jump on binary.org.au and have a look at our contact details, and you can see how you can assist in the appeal against this insane judgment that, she's somehow guilty for saying that men are men and not women and shouldn't be playing women's sport. And because of that, she's been fined $95,000. And because of that, she's been made to make a public confession where she stipulates that actually men are women, which I find completely and utterly offensive that a court or anyone would enforce that kind of thought policing. So, yeah,
can I just add
fight
as
back.
well? America obviously has protections, free speech protections, and we've seen the images coming out of America of William Leah Thomas, the swimmer, standing on the podium. We've seen cyclists, British cyclists. We've seen, who are male and massive. We did see Gavin Laurel Hubbard from New Zealand in the weightlifting against women. So, we see the examples, and the most horrific, or one of the most horrific, obviously, was Imam Khalif punching women in the head during the last Olympics. It's just sport. It is not sport to punch women in the head, not ever. And so it's only when the world, when viewers see the images of these males and hear their names and understand the context, that there is a public response to that. Why would you respond otherwise? You don't know about these things. And this is possible all around the world except in Australia. You cannot use Australian examples. I've been told in court that, again, even though the information is already in the public domain, we cannot use it to campaign, to report on, even though it's factual, it's evidence-based.
It's crazy that it can be called violence. As you said, it just shows you redefine a word, but how it can be called violence to actually just say this is a biological man. I mean, and I'm surprised as well, because getting on to maybe slightly less shaky territory, but actually this ruling affects minority women. It affects Jewish women, it affects Muslim women, because they're not allowed to, their culture, their faith says that they can't, and you shouldn't actually need to have a particular belief, but they can't get changed with men. They can't, so that's actually ruling out a whole, two different faith minorities from being able to be included and participate. I mean, it's staggering. Is it just the Anti-Discrimination Act that has caused all this, or are there other laws in Australia that are sort of contributing to it?
Well, again, you might want to speak to this as well, George, but it's set up by the anti-discrimination laws, but each state now, you have the ability to change your, the facts, the historical facts on your birth certificate, or in some places as often as you like, as long as you pay the fees every day. You can change it if you want to. Other states, you can only do it once a year. But, you've got these laws that are just nonsensical. You're rewriting history, you're rewriting facts. And it's like this free pass. And I like to say, just because something's written in law doesn't make it factual.
No, that's true.
Slavery was lawful, but it's not right. And segregation was lawful, but it was not right. And this is lawful in Australia, but it's not right. And it's only a matter of time until it will be overturned, because you can't write laws that defy the laws of nature. You just can't.
No, and this is it. The law is not a moral arbiter. And it's interesting. I can see someone in the comments making a point, and this kind of harks back to my family. If you're autistic or neurodiverse, you find it really difficult. You say what you see, basically, and you say what you feel, and these individuals wear their hearts on their sleeves. I know, I live with it every day, and you're forcing them to say something that isn't true, and just causing it's just wicked, Kirralie. And also, women who don't speak English as a first language. I mean, it boggles the mind. Me, I'm a stubborn beggar, right? And I've said this on social media, and I have an inkling you might be the same. Personally, I would rather go to prison, right, than make that confession. I would rather do a jail sentence. If someone had forced me at any point, I mean, at one point I had this activist, I mean, I will laugh. This is an anecdote that will go to my grandchildren. So he got his injunction, which I've been told would never be granted now because it was so wide ranging. And you know, the judge that was there that day was not actually a specialist judge from the media and communications list. He got like a silk sort of who sometimes sits as a judge. Anyway, he got this really wide-ranging injunction saying that I couldn't refer to him anywhere on social media, either directly or indirectly. And he tried to make that mean that social media meant WhatsApp. So I couldn't like text my friends or my lawyers and anyway, I said, I went on to Spinster, which was an all-female platform set up only for women. It was a women-only social media, and it was very clear that it was for biological women. And I went on there and I made some stupid joke about the fact that I don't use photo filters. I've never used photo filters. I wouldn't know how to use a photo filter. And I said something like, I don't need 40,000 photo filters not to look like a pork pie. The next thing I know, I have a penal notice coming through my email, and he has said that I have broken the injunction by saying that I don't look like a pork pie because apparently his appearance is the subject of jokes and things in the media. And I was in the ludicrous position of having to write a witness statement saying, I have never previously referred to the claimant as a pork pie or any other kind of food stuff. And it's just like, this is so ludicrous. You know, this is the extent to which these people want to control your speech and your life. You know, that, you know, and I was actually saying, fine, at this point, I would rather go to prison. I would rather go to prison. If I have to go and defend myself in court, I would rather go to prison than be forced. If you're going to ask me to go on the stand and tell the truth, and swear on the Bible, and I'm a practicing Catholic. You know, my faith means a lot to me. I will not swear on the Bible and lie. And I perceive these people as male in my head. You know, there's no way I can refer to them as female because I know they're not. They are male. So if you're going to ask me to swear on the Bible and say that these people are female, then no, I will rather go to jail. Yeah. And I haven't, and I would still do that. But obviously, it's one thing saying that, and it's another thing doing that. You know, when you've got children, is that a stance you're prepared to take, do you think?
Yeah, look, I will not be compelled to lie. I will not, like I said, no one will change my mind on that. So, you know, hopefully we've still got a long way to go before I would have to make that decision. But I can't change my mind on that. I can't change reality. I'm not going to refer to males as female. I'm not going to apologize for seeing them as male or for, you know, advocating for women's sex-based sports.
Yeah, well done, Kirralie. And I got to say, I think we really have flipped the lid in Australia on this whole issue. Like to add on to what Kirralie said, we got the insane state-based laws where, you know, I could walk in to the births, deaths and marriages office in Queensland and say, hey, I want to be a woman. And they'd give me a form to fill in and I'd fill it in and I'd be a woman, you know. I don't know how that would work, but I'd be a woman. And, you know, at least in the law of Queensland. And the same happens in Victoria and New South Wales and whole heap of other states. We've got the insane thing now where, which it was NRMA, which is the National Road Motorists Association of Australia, and also another insurer by the name of Allianz in Australia, were offering what's the classification, Kirralie? You have to remind me of this jargon about
your insurance.
The people that identified as neither sex, non-binary. That's the one, non-binary. I mean, the people that identified as non-binary would get a discount of several $100s off their insurance. This is the kind of thing that's going on in Australia. It's nuts. But it's not confined to Australia, obviously. You've spoken about it in what's happening in the UK. I think we're seeing a lot of this across the Western world, throughout Europe. We're seeing it in places like Canada. And I guess the question to both of you, given that you are very keen on this subject, where is this gender ideology taking us in Western democracies? Are we at a tipping point now where people are going to start pushing back, or what do you think?
Yes.
Yeah, I do. But I also, as I referred to earlier, I do think it's part of this problem, through the COVID years, through, Islam is a religion of peace, through to men can be women. It's all this conditioning that we are going to have compelled speech, that we are going to submit to a government narrative that is false. And, I think around the world, people are waking up and pushing back, and particularly because they came after the children. Once you come after the kids, that's where the mama bears, the papa bears really rise up and go, we will push back on this. But, also Australia is so far behind. I think we're one of only 4 nations now that have refused to do anything to stop these ridiculous puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones that cause irreversible harm.
Except in Queensland.
Yeah, except Queensland. But, so the fact that other nations, and in the UK, the Supreme Court, has defined where woman is in law, it means a female. The US obviously are doing a great job in changing their laws there, but we're very far behind. I'm not sure how we're going to overturn it, but Sal Grover, myself, and others are doing our best to do that. But yeah, you can talk more to that, Caroline, I'm sure.
Well, I think in the UK, it's been a real grassroots movement. I remember I joined it in 2015, and I was piqued actually by, you were talking about people need to see the pictures. There's a very famous picture, I don't know if anyone can bring it up, of a bunch of baseball players and basketball players, sorry, and in amongst them is this enormous great fella. He looks like Caitlyn Jenner, or someone. He's just really, really tall. And I got invited to join this group called Fair Play. And I just looked at the picture and I realized what it was all about. And I thought, wow. And at that point, a lot of the big names in the UK scene were in this little group. And we were all just exchanging ideas. And then, we saw people go on Mumsnet, and people just began to wake up, and they were saying, hang on, my daughter is coming home from school and being told that she can choose whether or not she's a man or a woman. And people, it was sort of like a drip effect. And it's been amazing to be in a part of, because it has been driven by grassroots. It's been driven by women. It's been driven by parents. But I remember 10 years ago, I was in this same room and I was doing an interview for BBC London. And I was talking about a subject close to my heart, which was midwives, and how the language of the Midwifery Council had been changed so that you couldn't say breastfeeding, you had to talk about chest feeding and cervix havers, and how this language and how you couldn't say that, you couldn't use the word mother or that a woman gave birth. And this was 10 years ago. And I wrote this article for the Conservative Women. And then I got interviewed by BBC London. And I talked about this man called Trevor McDonald, who said that he was the first man to give birth. And the BBC presenter looked as if I was mental. He thought I was mad. It's like, no, Caroline, this is far-fetched. Nobody believes that. No one's going to say that men can have babies. You're being really far out here. No one's ever going to say that. No one's ever going to believe that. And that was in 2015, a BBC presenter saying nobody's ever going to believe that men can have babies, and then 2-3 years later they were saying, oh, this is terribly transphobic, the idea. And I think in the UK we've woken up, but we shouldn't be complacent, because what we're seeing now is the Supreme Court has ruled exactly what a woman is, but there's still attempts to push back against that. And there's still activist groups saying, well, if you don't include a trans woman, you can still be sued. We're still seeing people be arrested for things that they say on social media. Apparently, this is supposed to change, but it isn't. There was a guy a couple of days ago. He said some disgraceful things, actually, on social media. I don't think he should have said them, but neither do I think he should have ended up with however many years in jail while we have child sex offenders and men amassing huge amounts of child pornography going free. So it's like, and as well, oh my goodness, we have the Labour government trying to implement a version of Islamophobia, trying to make Islamophobia, bring in Islamophobia blasphemy laws. They said it's not necessary to bring in blasphemy laws for Christians, but let's bring them in here. And I think what it's pointing to is that every single country really needs to fight for their freedom of speech, because once you start being compelled about what you can say, what you can't say, then that is a form of imprisonment. That's a form of oppression. You're so worried about what you can say. And so right now I can see there being a massive kickback. People are saying all kinds of things, and if you don't want people to say offensive words, then actually don't create the condition. If you know that saying X word or Y word is bad, then people are just going to say it to test the boundaries, and because no words should be illegal. So I guess, sorry, I've kind of gone off on a slight tangent, but I think the UK, we are doing what we can to push back, but I don't think the battle is won. I think what's really clear, I was out on this puberty blockers demonstration yesterday, is, we're sort of helping Kira and James with and the Bayswater group. We're funding that challenge, or making sure that they don't have to bear the cost themselves. This is going to be a monster. It's really clear that Wes Streeting and the NHS want this to happen. They want these trials to go ahead, and they know that the children in them could be damaged. And it's like, what kind of psycho are you that you want children to be damaged to say, oh, well, actually, these are wrong? Or more likely, what's going to happen is the way that the trial is designed is that they will ask the child a year later, 2 years later, are you feeling happier? Well, if you've got a child on those puberty blockers at the age of 8, because there's no lower age limit, no 10-year-old child is going to be able to tell you how they feel as an adult. No, a teenager will probably say, well, I'm feeling happy, because they've got all the social validation. Because
exactly. And protections and celebrations.
And I know this, when you look at the Tavistock Clinic, or the children who were being given these drugs in the UK, a huge amount of them were same-sex attracted. Others were autism. So and particularly with girls with autism, we saw an 1,000% spike of cases of girls identifying as boys. And autistic girls present very differently. And autistic girls find that they still want the social validation, they want the kudos, they want the friendship groups, but they don't have the social skills to be able to build that. So they find that they're on their own in the classroom or in the playground. They don't feel like a typical teenage girl. So then, okay, I might be a boy. And they get sucked into this social media world, Tumblr, and get told, oh, well, you don't identify as a typical stereotypical girl, you must be a boy. They get the pronouns and the drugs, and then they're the cool person in school, and everyone's tiptoeing around them. They've got the new identity, and and it's all great. Everything's wonderful until it isn't. So if you ask a child that's been on puberty blockers maybe 1 or 2 years, you're not going to get a coherent, joined up answer. So, and I think the activist groups are still pushing the trials because they want to be able to say, there's a benefit. And we know that, you know, the Labour government is still enthralled to these activists. And they're trying, you know, someone said, Wes Streeting, our health secretary, must have a really sore bottom because he's been sitting on the fence so long. You know, and so it is far from one, and it's very easy for us to sit here and go, yes, we've made huge strides in the UK, but I think we can't be complacent, and I think every country has to really fight for their freedom of speech rights.
Indeed. Well, that's probably a great way to wind this up, because we're nearing the top of the hour. And but Kirralie, thank you very much for joining us. Before we go, reminder that if you want to be part of the cause that's talking about abolishing or you know, jettisoning at least the section of the law that Kirralie is being fined under, it's gendertruthontrial.com. Go and sign our petition there. And if you want to assist Kirralie in mounting a legal challenge against this, go to binary.org.au, go to the contact page, drop her a line there, and Kirralie will tell you how you can assist in donating to assist in the legal challenge. It's very important that enough funds are raised, because it's a lawyer's picnic, these things, and they charge a pretty penny. So, Kirralie, any final words before we wrap up?
Look, just to say thank you so much. You know, the Australian legacy media in particular don't want to touch this with a 10-foot barge pole. I've been told even Sky News, which is our bastion of free speech in Australia, you know, I've been on a couple of programs there, but lawyers are also very, very nervous about what we might say, and the full story isn't being told. So thank you that CitizenGO, or that you guys are happy to share the story. I really appreciate it. And we need to share all of these stories, the ones you've mentioned, Sandy Peggy, we've got Sal Grover here in Australia, we've got Dr. Gillian Spencer, we've got Jasmine Sussex, the breastfeeding expert. We've got a lot of people going through the courts and challenging this. So get behind each one of us, because there's strength in numbers.
It's so bizarre that we're having to go to the courts and you know, fight a political fight over what is just simple biological reality. But this is the crazy times we live in. Anything to finish up with, Caroline?
Just to thank Kirralie for shining a light on this and your courage. I mean, I know, having been through probably a lesser ordeal than you, I don't know, but having been through it, I know that it's very easy to go on social media, but these things, it dominates your life. It takes over your life, and it takes up so much emotional energy, and it's so important what you're doing. And everyone, I think, owes just a huge debt of gratitude to you for your courage. You know, we're all cheering you on, and please just go and support gendertruth.org, but also please go to Kirralie's website. Is it binary.org, and really support her, because, you know, yes, it might be a lawyer's picnic, but at the same time, you can't do it. You know, what I've learned about the law is you can't do it without lawyers, no matter how much you think you know, because it's always about procedure and doing things the right way. So, Kirralie, thank you, and let's just hope that girls can play without men in their sports.
Yeah,
indeed. All right, those websites again: binary.org.au if you want to make a donation, and gendertruthontrial.com to get the crazy law overturned. Thank you very much, Carolyn Farrow. Thank you very much, Kirralie Smith. We wish you all the best in your appeal against this really unjust decision.
Thank you.
And thank you to the hundreds of people that have tuned in to watch this live stream, and probably the thousands more that'll tune in on the replay and the recording of the live stream. So thank you very much. God bless, and good night or good day, wherever you are.
Thank you.